This afternoon's topic, we'll be speaking about the King's Speech. It'll be better than the movie. Anybody see the movie, The King's Speech? Saw the movie? Okay, this year will be better than The King's Speech. The difference is that this was a 36-day speech. Elat Vorma Shediber Moshe. Moshe began the speech in the 40th year, right? The 40th year, the last 36 days of his life. That's quite a speech. 36-day speech. Now, this book is different than all the other books of the Torah. The other books of the Torah says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moshe. What does lemor mean? Repeat it. God told Moses, repeat it. You don't have it in this book. Why? Man ishtana Sefer Devarim from the other books. And the question is, Elat Von Shediber Moshe. These are the words that Moses spoke. Where's God in the picture? Where's Hashem in the picture? The Rambam says that anyone who says that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke one word of the Torah on his own, not getting it from God, is a heretic. So where's God in the picture? And the book begins, Elat Voram Shediber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. 40 years ago, when God drafted him at the burning bush, what did he say? Lo yishtavorem anochi. I'm not a man of words. Ki chvat peh, chvat loshen anochi. I can't speak clearly. So he starts out, Lo yishtavorem anochi. After 40 years of speech therapy, God says, Mi sam peh la'adam. Who gives a human being the koach of speech? So after 40 years, he became Elat Vorim Ashediber Moshe, became the great orator. 40 years of speech therapy. But the question is, where's God in the picture? So the answer is as follows, according to the Vilna Gaon and others. The other books of the Torah, Rabbi Yaakov, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. What does the word lemor mean? Repeat. God spoke to Moshe a certain section of the Torah, and then lemor, repeat it. So when he repeated it, Ephraim, it wasn't in real time. He got the nevuah, and then when he digested it, lemor, he's going to say it over to the Yidden. Eila Dvorim Shediber Moshe, the book of the Devarim is different. This was spoken in real time. Shchina medaberet metoch groino shel Moshe. It doesn't say God spoke to Moshe lemor, like the other books, Rav Zalman. Because this book, when Moshe opened up his mouth, whose voice did the Yidden hear? The Shekhinah. I think it's called a ventriloquist or read my lips. Who said that? Read my lips. Elat Vorma Shediber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe mouthed. But who actually spoke to him? The Shekhinah. Shekhinah medaberet metoch groine shel Moshe. What's the proof? The parsha that we read yesterday. The parsha of the Shema. It says, "V'natati mitar artzachem bi'ito." I will give rain. I will give you rain, and your land in its season. Who's talking? Well, Moshe's talking. Is Moshe going to give us rain in its season? So this is proof that Moshe moved his lips. Read my lips. But who was the actual speaker? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the parsha we read yesterday in the Shema. V'natati mitar artzachem bi'ito. I will give rain in your land, bi'ito in its time. Yoreh Malkosh, even though it looked like Moshe spoke the words, but he was the ventriloquist, it was actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore this is the king's speech, a 36-day speech, said in the last 36 days of Moshe Rabbeinu's life.
Who did the people think was speaking?
Well, Shechina medaberet b'tach groine shel Moshe. Shechina medaberet b'tach groine shel Moshe. They saw Moshe's mouth moving. Remember the ventriloquist? Jerry Mahoney, lahavdil. I'm dating myself. Moshe moved his lips, but it was actually God speaking. Otherwise, how could Moshe say, I will give you rain in the season? Moshe can give us rain. Even scientists today cannot give us rain when there's a drought, right? So obviously, even though Moshe was moving his lips, it was God saying, "V'natati mitar artzachem bi'ito." So this was in real time, not like the other books of the Torah where God spoke to Moshe, lemor. At a later time, repeat it. So that's why this book is what is unique and different. After 40 years, Moshe Rabbeinu had graduated to be the great orator where him and God were speaking simultaneously. The Pasha that we read yesterday, Pasha's Akev. V'hoya Akev Tishmun. What does the word Akev mean? Unkala says it means because. Because you will listen to the mitzvot, then God will do chesed for you. But Rashi is not happy with that, because the word Akev, everybody who knows Hebrew, the word Akev doesn't mean because. Unkala says it means because. Heal, very good. The word Akev means heal, right, Chava? Ekav means heal. La'akov, to follow, the heel.
So maybe it means it follows that.
So what does because got to do? So therefore, Rashi says, Chava, Ekev tishmun, im ha-mitzvot ha-kalot, she'odam dosh ba'akevav tishmun. If you do the mitzvahs that people step on with their heel, if you do that mitzvah, then God will give you what? The chesed. Which mitzvah does a person step on with his heel?
They don't think it is important.
Which mitzvah? Which mitzvah do you do with your heel? Kum hitalech ba'aretz. Kum hitalech ba'aretz. What did God tell the first Jew? The first mitzvah. Go walk the land. So which mitzvah, Zalman, you do with your heel? Walk the land of Israel. People think it's a light mitzvah, but taking a tour, Sharona, in the land of Israel is a great mitzvah. God told Abraham, the first tourist, Kum hitalech ba'aretz. Get up and walk the land. So that's a mitzvah you do bi'akevav. Appreciate that mitzvah. Don't step on it. Get it? Don't step on it, but don't step on it. Appreciate every trit in Israel is not a mitzvah, right? The Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, every dalet amos a person walks in Israel, there's another level olam haba. Rambam and Hilchos Malachim Zalman. Every 4 steps you take in Israel, you get another level of olam haba. God is endless. Olam haba is endless. God is called the Ein Sof. It's endless. So the afterlife is also endless. So the mitzvah that people think it's a light mitzvah, people take for granted walking in the land of Israel. Right? When you see a jogger running, you should say, mitzvah, mitzvah. The joggers are running. They don't realize they're getting mitzvah. What?
How about if you go on the bus or the train? Does that count?
Oh, Chave Esther Bam Kasha from Baumland. The Gemara in Kiddushin asked Chava's question. There is a halacha of Zalman. If you see your Rebbe or your parent within Dalet Amos of you, you're supposed to what? Get up. That's halacha. Your Rebbe or your parent approach within Dalet Amos, 8 feet, you're supposed to rise. So the Talmud asked the question, let's say your parent or your Rebbe is not walking by, he's riding by. Do you still have to get up? Surely, he's riding by. Do you still have to get up? Yes. So the Talmud says, Rochev kemahalech dami. Rochev, riding, is like walking. So you see that if you take a bus, Gus, or you take the light train from Pisgat Zev, right? The light train, now it's empty. Our peace partners don't take it anymore. Baruch Hashem. It's empty now, right? Well, no, they left it destroyed. They left it. They don't stop anymore there. Baruch Hashem, now I can have a place to sit down. So every time I'm riding the light train, it's like what, Rabbi Yaakov? I'm walking. Gemara in Kiddushin, Rochev kemahalech. Riding is considered like what? Walk on by. No, wrote that song, Burt Bacharach. The guy's 85 years old. He looks 60. And good looking too. Anyway, so where were we? So Akev. So the mitzvah of walking in Eretz Yisrael is a choshev mitzvah. Don't take it for granted.
Do you have to live here to walk?
Well, how do you? Well, I guess you have to live here first in order to walk it, right? Okay, if you come to visit, it's also good, right? But it's much better to stay here. We're going to talk about it. Now, the word Akev is also Rosh Tevot. You know what Rosh Tevot means? FBI, CIA, NYPD, TNT. Okay? Any mitzvah in the Torah, if you do it sitting down, are you yoitza of Zalman? You daven Shemona Esrei sitting down. Are you yoitza? Yes. You read the Torah sitting down, you're yoitza. But you should stand. The Balkara should stand. When you blow shofar, you should stand, but you don't. Let's say you sit by Kiddush, you sit by shofar. Any mitzvah in the Torah, if you sit, you're Yoitza. There are 3 exceptions. 1 minute, Rivka. Don't steal my thunder. There are 3 exceptions, and they are Akev. Akev means you have to stand on your heel. The ayin stands for what? Avodah b'mikdash. Rav Zalman, if the Kohen did the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, sitting down, it's like he did nothing. The ayin of Akev stands for avodah b'mikdash. The kuf stands for kriya lamet. Lo yaleinu, someone has to tear kriya for a dead relative. He has to tear his clothes. Let's say he does it sitting down. It's like he did nothing. It has to be dafka Akev, standing on your heel. And the bet stands for what? Birchat Kohanim. Birchat Kohanim. If a Kohen in a wheelchair does Birchat Kohanim, it's like he did nothing. It's not his fault, but it's like he did nothing. So all the mitzvahs in the Torah, if you do sitting down, Shmon Esrei, blowing shofar, even reading the Torah, if you do it sitting down, you're Yoitza. The only exception is Akev. The ayin stands for Avodah b'mikdash. The kuf stands for what? Kriya lamet lo yaleinu. And the bet stands for what? Birchat Kohanim. That's rak b'yamida b'yakevav. That has to be dafka standing on your Akev.
What if Birchat Kohanim in the Beit Knesset, if you're sitting down?
Not you, I'm talking to Kohen. You can sit. If the Kohen sits while he does Birchat Kohanim, it's like he did nothing.
Oh, but the congregation...
You can sit. Better to stand, but if you sit, you still get it. But if the Kohen is sitting by Birchot Kohanim, then it's like he did nothing. If the Balkora sits, it's still good. It's better, of course, that he stands. Kavod HaTzibur. But it's not miyakev. The only 3 mitzvahs, surely, that are miyakev, not doing on your Akev, are Akev. Avodah b'mikdash, ayin, kriya lamet, lo yaleinu, and what? And bet, Birchat Kohanim, they have to be done b'yakevav. Otherwise, it doesn't have any effect at all. I'm telling you, it's better to stand. But if you sit, you're still Yotze anyway, right? Even Kiyat Shofar. If the Baal Tekeya sits, surely, he's still Yotze. But these are 3 exceptions where even B'di'evet is nothing, yes?
What do the person say about Kriya? Why do you have to stand?
Why? This is a chok. I don't know why. The Kriya Lamet is a chok. That's the Akev. You know, this is God's laws. It's like wearing shatnez. You know? You can wear, Shirley, you can wear a nice wool sweater over a linen blouse. Is there a problem? No. Why not? It has to be. The issue is only if they're sewn together. So this is what? This is part of the chukim. Right? This is part of the chukim that these 3 mitzvahs are special, where if you don't do them be'akev on the heel, they don't count, yes? Go ahead. Right.
Each one of them is something where something is actually done.
Go ahead. Avodah b'mikdash.
God forbid has to make
Kriya lamet.
You still got a ripped shirt.
Right. But it doesn't count. If he did it sitting down, he has to get a new shirt and rip it. It's like he did nothing. You have to dafka stand. Okay? And Birchot Kohanim, if the Kohen is in a wheelchair, it's like he didn't do anything. It's not his fault, but it's like a person that has no arm. Can he put on tefillin? It's not his fault. Yes? Yeah, if you sit down, you're Yaitza. Of course you can sit. Of course it's better to stand, Maddie. But if you sit, it's not a problem. The only time it's a problem, these 3 mitzvahs that are the Rosh Tevot are Akev. The Torah goes on and speaks about what? V'yachalta v'savata v'rachta Hashem Elohecha al oretz hatovah. Here you have the mitzvah of what? Of Birchat HaMazon, right? V'yachalta v'savata v'rachta Hashem Elohecha al oretz hatovah. So the question is, we know that every time you do a mitzvah between man and God, you have to make a bracha first. When you walk into a sukkah, Rav Zalman, you make a bracha, right? Living in a sukkah is a mitzvah. Living in Israel is a bigger mitzvah. Right? Living in Israel is a bigger mitzvah than living in a sukkah. The Sefer tells us that living in Israel is the greatest mitzvah of all. Keneged kol Torah kula. Living in the land of Israel. Right? So therefore, if you make a bracha when you walk into a sukkah, why don't you make a bracha of living in the land of Israel? That's really a stark kasha of Yaakov, right? Living in Israel is a mitzvah. The Torah tells us in next week's parsha clearly. In next week's parsha it says, Ki atem ovrim et hayarden, v'yishaftem ba. When you cross the Jordan, l'reshet et ha'oretz, Hashem lekechem loisem lechem v'yirishtem ota, v'yishaftem ba. So it's a positive mitzvah to what? To live in what? The land of Israel. And the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, La'olam yidar be'eretz Yisrael. A person should always live in Israel. Even be'ir sheruba goyim. Even if the city has the majority of goyim, you should what? Live in Israel. V'lo b'chutz la'aretz. Afila be'ir sheruba Yisrael. You shouldn't live in chutz la'aretz. Even in a city which the majority of what? Is Jews. You shouldn't live there if it's chutz la'aretz. You should rather live in Eretz Yisrael, even if you're the only yid in the whole city. You hear? And the Rambam says, "Shekol hayotzei chutz la'aretz kilu oved avodah zarah." Incredible. And the Pischei Tshuva says that Yishuv Eretz Yisrael shkula keneget kol hamitzvah shebetorah afilu b'zman hazeh. The Pischei Tshuva and Even Ezra Siman Ayin Hey says that living in the land of Israel is equal to all the mitzvahs of Torah even today. The Sefer said it in the days of the temple. He said, "Afilu b'zman hazeh." So if that's the case, living in Israel, such a great mitzvah, how come there's no bracha, leisha be'eretz Yisrael, like there is what? Leisha b'sukkah. So the first time you come, or when you wake up in the morning, when you put on tefillin, don't you make a bracha? Every time you walk into a sukkah. So I heard of Yaakov Peretz, the Mukubal in the Ir Atika. I wouldn't hear it from him, I would not repeat it. Next time you're going to have lunch now, right? You're going to have dinner, you're going to bench. What bracha do you make? Baruch ato Hashem, ala aretz, v'ala mazon. So he says every time you bench, it's a two-for bracha. It's a bracha for the food, and it's brechat ha'aretz. Baruch ato Hashem, ala aretz, v'ala mazon. The pasuk says, v'chalta savata v'rachta, es Hashem elahecha, ala aretz ha'tovah. So every time you bench, Shirley, it's a twofer. It's a bracha on the food, and it's also a bracha what? Ala ha'aretz. And therefore, he says, he quotes the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon asks the question, when you make a bracha on the bread, you say, hamotzi lechem min? That's not Ulpan 103. Ask any Ulpan teacher, Sharona. The bracha should be hamotzi lechem, Reb Tzvi, min ha'adama. The Vilna Gaon asked that question. Should be hamotzi lechem min ha'adama. What do you say, min ha'aretz? Yes. Says the Vilna Gaon, ha'aretz is Eretz Yisrael. Hamotzi lechem min ha'aretz. Wherever you eat bread, it's what? In the schus of ha'aretz. So therefore, our parrot said that anyone who benches outside of Israel, ulai zeh bracha lavatala. I wouldn't repeat it. I heard it from Yaakov Peretz. He's the Mukubal in the Ir Atika. He says, anyone who makes the bracha, Baruch Atu Hashem al Oretz al Hamazon, in where? In Boca Raton, ulai zeh bracha lavatala. So better don't eat bread in Boca Raton, or where? In London. Why do you want to put yourself, Sharona, in a suffix bracha lavatala? Baruch Atu Hashem al Oretz al Hamazon, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, not min ha'adama. Okay? So you eat a bagel here, it's really a holy bagel. Whoa, it's a holy bagel. Now, what? Now, how many words does a bracha motzi have, Shirley? 10. You can count it. So, that's why we have a minhag. When we make a bracha on the bread, we put our 10 fingers on the bread, because the word hamotzi contains what? Oh, shalom, welcome back. Nice seeing you. Because the word hamotzi contains what? 10 words. Therefore, the minhag to put 10 fingers on the bread on Shabbat when you make a bracha, right? There's 11, Mrs. Eagle. There's 11 stages to take the raw wheat and make what? A holy bagel. There's 11 stages. Not 10, there's 11. But, so why does a motzi Reb Tzvi have 10 what? 10 words? Because God gave us 10 fingers. Get it? Which came first? The 10 fingers or the 10 words of the motzi? Don't you get it? But the Baal HaTurim says something amazing. Chazal were metakein. The Anshe Esader L'Sonya were metakein that a motzi should have what? 10 words. Because involved in the bread-making process, there are 10 mitzvot. There are 11 stages to take the raw wheat and make it bread. But in the bread-making process, Rab Zalman, there are 10 mitzvot. So Keneged, those 10 mitzvot, Chazal u'metaken amotzi dafke with what? 10 words. What are the 10 mitzvot involved in making bread? So next time you eat a holy bagel, have in mind, there are 10 mitzvot that got that holy bagel to you. The first mitzvah is, Lo sachro shor b'chamor yachtav. Before you eat a holy bagel, you have to what? Plow the field to plant the wheat. So you have to plow. You're not allowed to plow with 2 different species of animals. No. You're not allowed to. Because it's Sar Balachayim, right? Because the ox is much stronger than the donkey, it's cruel. So the first mitzvah involved in making bread, you can't make bread unless you plow the land. What? Don't 1 minute, don't rush me. The first mitzvah, not to plow with 2 different animals together. Then there's a lav, like tizra klayim. Once the field is already plowed and you're ready to what? Put the seeds in, you can't put klayim seeds in the same hole. You can't put 2 different, a wheat seed and what? And a grape seed, you can't put it in the same hole. So that's klayim. That's the second mitzvah. Then, when the seed grew into wheat, right? The 5 types of grain, right? Then there's a mitzvah of, I hope you're counting. There's a mitzvah of leket. The English word collect. Leket. When the farmer cuts the grain, 2 stalks or less fall, he's not allowed to pick them up. Therefore, you look at the Megillat Ruth, Boaz said, L'mi anara hazot. Boaz, he was a very rich man, like the Ponderosa. He had a lot of schnorrers in the field. So the Talmud wonders, this great chief rabbi, he wonders about this girl. Who's this girl? What's he so interested in this girl? There are many beggars there. So the Talmud says, in Tractate Yevamah, he noticed the other beggars were not careful. They were picking up even 3 or 4 stalks at a time, which is gzela. The oral Torah says that leket is 2 stalks or less. If it's 3 or more, you're stealing from the boss. The other people were not particular. Boaz was Michael. But he noticed that Ruth would only take what? If 2 from the reapers, the great reaper. From his hand, if 2 or less fell at the same time, she would pick it up. If 3 or more fell, she would not take it. So he was very impressed that unlike the other schnorrers, she was very makpid on gzela, and gezel. So there's a law of leket. Then there's a law of shikha. If the farmer forgets a bundle of grain in the field after he takes in all the bundles, Reb Zalman, is he allowed to go back and get it? No. It's the only mitzvah you can do by forgetting. If you forget it on purpose, there's no mitzvah, Reb Yaakov. It's strange. All mitzvahs tzrichas kavanah. The only mitzvah you can do dafke when you don't know, that's shikha. If you forgot it on purpose, it doesn't count. Yiddish Ephraim. So you have to really forget it. The Talmud says this farmer once made a great party because he actually did the mitzvah shikha. He actually forgot a bundle. Not on purpose. He actually forgot a bundle. Then the mitzvah not to go back and get it. So the mitzvah shikha, don't go back and get your forgotten bundle of what? Grain. Then there's a mitzvah payah. Leave the corner of the field. Then there's a mitzvah sachsam shor b'disha. I forgot to tell you. When your donkey or your ox, not together, are plowing a field, you cannot muzzle his mouth. Then there's a mitzvah trumah. Once the grain has been what? Cut. Then you have to give truma to Mr. Cohen. Then you have to give Meiser Rishon to Mr. Levi. Then you have to give Meiser Ani to the poor person. And you're still not finished. When you finally make the dough, it's time to make the dough. You have to give a portion of the dough to Mr. Cohen. That's called what? Challah. Hope you're counting, Azalin. There are 10 mitzvahs involved in a holy bagel. So therefore, Baal Turim says, Chazal v'matakein, 10 words in a motzi, because that's good Dvar to say when you're having lunch with a bagel, that there are 10, if you remember what the 10 mitzvahs are, to produce that holy bagel, 10 mitzvahs were involved, and therefore the bracha of hamotzi contains exactly what?
10 mitzvahs.
10 words. 10 words. For the 10, you count to 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I test you on it?
Yeah.
I'll believe you. Well, I test you on it. Okay. What?
Isn't muzzling also tsar b'alei?
Which one?
Muzzling.
Okay. Lo yisachsam shar b'dishay. Right? The chinuch says it's tsar balachayim.
Counting it twice.
Why? It's not counting it twice. You can't work. You can't hitch to the plow an ox and a donkey.
Right.
That's one mitzvah.
Doesn't bother.
So what? But there's another mitzvah. Even if you're only plowing with a donkey, you can't muzzle his mouth. It's a separate lav in the Torah. The chinuch and the Rambam say it's tsar balachayim. The Torah doesn't say that. It's a separate lav in the Torah. Don't hitch a giraffe and what? And a donkey to your wagon together at the same time. And also, whenever you're working with any animal in the field, you're not allowed to what? Muzzle his mouth. So the chinuch says it's tsar balachayim, but it's a separate mitzvah. Okay? So there are 10 mitzvahs involved in what? In producing that holy bagel. Okay?
Is a giraffe kosher?
Giraffe is kosher. A giraffe is kosher. Do you know that? Now, Dr. Ari Greenspan, you know him. No? He, a couple of years ago, Sharoni, he had at the hotel right down here, he had a buffet of exotic kosher foods. He had grasshopper, which some of them are kosher, Maddie, you know that? He had grasshopper. He had peacock. Peacock is kosher. You didn't know that? Peacock. But he said he tried to get a giraffe. He went to Kenya, but they're very expensive.
But I thought they don't know where to shop.
Oh, you see, Rivka, that's a fallacy. People,
So why don't
well, let me tell you. The tractate Chulin says that shechting anywhere on the neck is kosher. It doesn't matter where you shecht an animal. You shecht it on the neck, you cut the windpipe, what's it called? The esophagus and the trachea. Trachea. Doesn't matter where on the neck, it's kosher. So people think because you don't know where to shecht the giraffe, it doesn't matter. Any place on the long neck is kosher. The real reason why we don't do it is too expensive. They're very, very expensive to get a giraffe. And how are you going to get him down? How are you going to get him down? You can't stun him because it could be a treifa. So that's the real reason, because it's not practical. It's not practical. He tried to go there to Kenya, said very expensive, and how's he going to get it? So therefore he passed, but he did have peacock, and he had grasshoppers. They're called, what are they called? Locusts. Certain are kosher. And he knew exactly, he had the Masorah, and he charged $100 a person. A few years ago he had it. Buffalo, he had buffalo, not buffalo wings, real buffalo. And he had peacock, and he had other exotic dishes that are kosher. That he had the quail, and he had other different type of...
Are there any other different...
What?
Are there any different opinions except that one that you can shecht anywhere on the neck?
No, Baruch Hashem, that is more machlokus. Everyone holds that shechting anywhere on the neck is kosher. Doesn't matter where. But it's not practical, so the giraffe is so huge to get him down, and it's very expensive, so therefore he passed on that. But tall enough to shecht. Okay, but anyway, the Torah goes on over here, and it says, Kol ha-mitzvah, all the mitzvah which I command you today. So Rashi's puzzled. It should have said Kol ha-mitzvot, because there are 613. How come God says Kol ha-mitzvah, all the mitzvah which I command you today? Even though God said it 3,300 years ago, but every day we open up a Chumash, God speaks to us anew. So he says, Kol ha-mitzvah asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. So Rashi said it should have said Kol ha-mitzvot. Hakman says Kol ha-mitzvah. So Rashi says Kipshuto. The simple meaning is that all 613 are what, Maddie? It's one package. So Reform Judaism wants to say that this mitzvah doesn't apply today. It doesn't wash. All the 613 are what? One package. Kol ha-mitzvah, says Rashi. If you tamper with it, if you try to what? Say that one doesn't apply, then you will null all of them. Take it or leave it. Then Rashi gives another interpretation. Kol ha-mitzvah means the entire mitzvah. Yiddish? Im eschalta b'mitzvah gemorota. A person begins a mitzvah, don't quit in the middle. Make sure you complete it. Otherwise, you get no partial credit. Who gets credit for the mitzvah? Guys, how do I know? There's a pasuk in Joshua 24. It says there's Atzmos Yosef, Ashehelu b'nei Yisrael mitzrayim kavru b'Shechem. Joshua 24 says the bones of Joseph that the Jewish people took out of Mitzrayim, they buried in Shechem. Who took the bones out of it? Moshe. It says Vayikach Moshe Atzmos Yosef. So how can Joshua 24 contradict Exodus 17? Exodus 17 says Vayikach Moshe Atzmos Yosef. The Jews were busy in the jewelry stores. Remember? And only Moses took the bones. So how come Joshua 24 says the bones of Joseph that the Jewish people brought out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem? I, Moshe, alone took the body. Says Rashi, Elefi Shalei Hispik Legomro, V'Gomor Yisrael Nikos Hashem. Since Moshe Rabbeinu began the mitzvah, he schlepped the bones for 40 years, surely, but he couldn't complete it. Why? Because he couldn't come to Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, who did bury him in Shechem? The Jewish people. So they get complete credit. That's pretty amazing.
So why doesn't he get credit?
There's no complete, there's no partial credit, even though Machshavet Tova, I would ask the question, Machshavet Tova, K'sh Baruch Hu Tzarav L'Maisa. We know Machshavet Tova, K'sh Baruch Hu Tzarav L'Maisa. A person has a good intention, and he's prevented from doing the mitzvah by circumstances beyond his control, he gets what? But that's if he completed it. I'll give you an example. A guy goes to the hospital to visit a sick person. And he finds out, Baruch Hashem, the sick person went home already. In God's eyes, he's like he visited a sick guy. But he did the whole mitzvah. He went to the hospital. Here, Moshe Rabbeinu only began the mitzvah. He did not complete it. Who completed it? The Jewish people. So they get what? Full credit. Amazing. A guy can start a mitzvah and he runs out of gas. And the other guy completes it. The guy who completes it gets full credit. And the first guy gets zero. Frightening. Frightening. Huh? What?
Moshe Rabbeinu a Jew? So he's part of the Jewish people?
It's Atzmos, but we know Moshe didn't bury him in Shechem. Moshe couldn't come to Shechem. He didn't come to Shechem. That's Rashi's point, that Moshe gets no credit, even though he took the body out, but he did not complete the mitzvah. Only the guy who completes it gets what? Gets, and speaking about Bert Backrack, his great-great-great-grandfather, the Chavas Yoyer, a great posek who lived in the 1600s, his name was Backrack, he paskined the Shaila Shrona on this Rashi. Even in the 1600s, there were shatchanim trying to make a living. A shatchan had gered a shidduch. You hear this, Lillian? A shatchan read a shidduch between a boy and a girl. It didn't work out. Didn't work out. Didn't work out. A few months later, another shatchan read the same shidduch. And bingo, it clicked. So the first shatchan went to the Chavas Yor and he says, I want a piece of the pie. After all, I'm the one that introduced them the first time. This second shatchan is what? Stole my customer. So I should get at least 50% of what? Of the shatchanas geld. What a Chavas Yor paskin? Rav Bakrak. Now, he showed this Rashi, that you begin something, you don't finish it, too bad. The other guy who completes it gets full credit. He doesn't have to give shatchan number one $1. So you paskin based on a Rashi. Takes the Chavas Yor to do that. Okay, but he paskin halacha l'maisa based on this Rashi. Even though the first shatchan worked hard, Reb Zalman, he introduced them and he worked. It didn't work. They didn't like each other. A few months later, the other guy just came in with the finish. First guy gets zero. What?
How does Pirkei Avot fit in when it says you get reward for the attempt, but not necessarily for the accomplishment?
Oh, so that's what I told Rabbi Aaron this. Machshava tova K'sh Baruch Hu Tzarav L'Maisa. That's if you. I hear what you're asking.
I was wondering.
Right?
There must be.
So what do you want from Moses? He did the best that he can do. He did the best that he can do. What are you shutting him out for? Huh? What? But he gets nothing. But why should he get nothing? So maybe you could say, because if he wouldn't have sinned, he could have come to Pisgat Zev. Huh? I mean, here, you asked me a good kasha, right? He did the best that he could. What do you want? He couldn't come here. But why couldn't he come here? Because of his what? Chet. So he caused it himself. Huh?
Must be because of onus. He couldn't.
So, but he was an onus, but yet he doesn't get any credit. That's what Rashi's telling us. So the point is, when a person begins a mitzvah, he should what? See it through, right? See it through. Or be there at the end and finish it. Then you get full credit. Okay? Well, photo finished. Ah, photo finished, right? Nachon, yeah. Yeah. The Torah goes on and says something amazing. It says, Mamre meyitem im Hashem. The Torah says, you have been rebellious im Hashem. Is that proper Hebrew? Should have said, Mamre meyitem neget Hashem. You have been rebellious against God. But it doesn't say that. It says, Mamre meyitem im Hashem. You have been rebellious together with God. What does that mean? That even when a Jew rebels, God is still with him. There's an amazing pasuk in Tehillim, Kuf Lamed Tes. Chapter 139, verse 8. King David says, when I die and I go to heaven, Im esak shamayim shamata. When I die and I go to heaven, shamata. You're over there. Vatzia Shaol, King David was very afraid maybe he's going to hell. Can you imagine? He was haunted by the sin of what? Of Bathsheba, even though it was not technically adultery, but it wasn't a nice, it wasn't adultery. Technically she had to get, but it was still a scandal. Still a scandal in Chil Hashem. So King David was afraid he might go to hell. So he says in chapter 139, 8, Im esak shamayim shamata. When I die and I go to heaven, you're there. Vatzia Shaol, but if I have to go down to hell, Hineka. Hineka. What does that mean? Behold, you are there. God never abandons the Jew, Moshe, not even in hell. Mamri meyitem im Hashem. Even when you rebel, God is still with you. Wow. So King David comforted himself. Yiddish of Yaakov, that even if he has to go to hell, Hineka. Now, why is hell called Sheol? Gehenom is a Talmudic coin. In Tanakh, Gehenom is called Sheol. What does Sheol mean? From the word She'elah. She'elah. Hell is not a physical place. Hell is a state of mind. Who creates heaven or hell? We do. God creates the physical world in order for us to create Olam Haba. Heaven and hell are not a physical place. It's a state of mind. We create our own reality. A person lives a righteous life, a good life, a life of chesed. So when he passes over, his memories, that's the greatest Gan Eden. He sees all the good that he accomplished. How much sunshine he spread. How much sunshine he spread. That's Gan Eden. But a person that was a wicked person, and once he sheds the bodysuit, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It's your consciousness alone with him. She'elah, the person is haunted. He's questioning himself. How could I waste all the opportunities Hashem gave me? What did I do with my life? The questioning, the self-doubt, the torment that tortures the neshama after death. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That's the worst Gehenna. That anguish with you and God alone watching the videotape. So anyway, Sheol means hell. So King David says that even in such a state of mind, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there with the person. He's never alone.
What makes you think bad people think they're dead?
But once they're dead, they can't fool themselves anymore. They're haunted by their wicked deeds. You see the movie Ghost? You never saw the movie Ghost? It's pretty amazing. That's with Whoopi Goldberg. It's amazing that when a person dies, the Mishnah says in Avot, after a person dies, his good deeds become malachim. The Mishnah Masechta Avot. And his bad deeds become demons to torment him. So our behavior remains, lives beyond the grave. We create or destroy by our behavior down here on earth. So the Mishnah says, you do a mitzvah, you create what? Praklit echad, an advocate. That the good deed you did becomes a positive living energy that's part of you. But later, a person does an Aveirah, he creates Sanegor. Right? What's that? A prostate means a demon. So that's a person's consciousness. So what I'm telling you is Rabbi Yosef Albo says that in Sefer Ikrim, that heaven and hell, of course, are not a physical place, it's a state of mind. It's a person's consciousness. But anyway, that's why Gehenna is called Sheol, where the person keeps asking himself how he could mess up like that, why he didn't do the right thing. Hashem gave him the capabilities, and he just wasted it. So that mental anguish for a Jew can only last 12 months. That's over. You should stop saying Kaddish after 12 months, right? So that process lasts 12 months at a maximum time. So therefore, for a parent, we stop saying Kaddish after 11 months. Because we don't want to imply that our parents are, need to spend maximum time in that state of mind. Okay? What?
But don't we, as Orthodox Jews,
Yeah.
believe there is a physical, literal heaven and...
No, that's the wrong religion. The physicality is only in this world. Olam haba, the Rambam says there's nothing physical. It's all spiritual. The main difference between this world and the next, this is a world of physicality, and life after death, it's just the mind, consciousness. The neshama is your consciousness without the bodysuit. There's nothing physical there. There's only spiritual.
I thought the Rabbi says that after Mashiach comes, nothing's finished.
No, don't mix up life after death, nothing to do with Mashiach, right? Life after death, nothing. Mashiach is being the physical world. But when a person dies, he moves on to a higher plane of existence where he sheds the bodysuit. Therefore, a dead person in Hebrew, Rabbi Yaakov, is called a niftar. Even a modern Hebrew, it's an Aramaic word. Niftar means released. He's released. The body, the soul is no longer trapped in the body, right? The soul is no longer trapped. It's released now. But what?
What is the term Tchiyat
Tchiyat HaMeitim means the physical resurrection of death. It has nothing to do with life after death. Life after death is the world of the souls. Right? But at the end of time, after Mashiach comes, God will resurrect the dead body, and the soul will come from Olam Haba and join the dead body. There'll be a physical resurrection. That's one of the Ani Mamins, right? Meitim Yechaye'el Barov Chazdo Baruch Hadeyat Shem Tehilato Meitim Yechaye'el Barov. The last of the Ani Mamins, right? That there'll be a physical resurrection. Why is that so important to Judaism? Chaya Meitim, but it's one that Yid Gimel Mitzvah, right? Why is that the Ikra of Yahadut, to believe that there'll be a physical resurrection? And amazing, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says something incredible. He says God is going to utilize cloning to resurrect the dead. We know that all miracles are grounded in Teva. Do you know that? You don't know that? When God split the Red Sea, it says a hurricane blew all night. God could have snapped his fingers. Why did God have to have a hurricane blowing all night, Rabbi Yaakov? What? Because all miracles are grounded in Teva, says the Abarbanel. He goes through all the 10 plagues and he shows how they all grounded in Teva. Once a year, the algae in the Nile turns red, the fish die, and the frogs can't live there, so they jump on. Every miracle, says Abarbanel, is grounded in Teva. Why? Because to God, the natural and the supernatural is what? Same thing. How do you say nature in Hebrew? Hateva. It's Gematria Elohim. What looks like nature, the same Gematria is Elohim. 86, right, Shirley? So, The Aryeh Kaplan Zatzal takes this a step further. He says the greatest of all miracles, Tchiyat HaMesim, God will utilize human cloning to bring back the dead body. Reclone. Okay? And we know that the DNA of a human being is contained in what? In the luz. The luz bone never decays. The entire DNA of a human being is contained in... Anyway, stay tuned. But why is it so important to believe in a physical resurrection? Why? Why is it ani mamin? So the answer is, even though King David says in Psalms that the greatest pleasure is in Olam Haba, we cannot comprehend the pleasure of Olam Haba. It's beyond compare, hugged by the one above. So why do you disturb the neshama to call, at the end of time, you're going to call the neshama down to what? To join a dead physical body. What are you disturbing her for? She's grooving with the boss. Reunited, and it feels so good. When a tzaddik dies, it's called Halula. It's a wedding. The neshama kavayachol marries God. So why do you have to have a physical resurrection? So the Vilna Gaon explained, no matter what great pleasure the neshama has in Olam Haba, united with God, a neshama cannot do an act of chesed. A neshama cannot help an old lady across the street. A neshama cannot give tzedakah. A neshama cannot put on tefillin. That you need what? A guf. Right? It's true. The greatest pleasure of Olam Haba. But a disembodied soul cannot do mitzvot. So God will have the resurrection, the best of both worlds, where the neshama will come down to the guf and be reunited so the guf can continue to what, Rabbi Yaakov? Do mitzvot. A neshama can't do mitzvot. It's too late now. It's too late. So therefore, there has to be what? A physical resurrection. Yes?
Whenever Moshe was up on the mountain,
right,
getting ready to receive the
tablets.
Yes.
Take 2 tablets and call me in the morning.
But anyways,
What?
God showed him the pattern for the Mishkan from the heavenly, and he said, make it according to the pattern that I showed you. So if heaven's not physical and literal, how come...
God showed him an image in his head. God showed him an image, not physical, right? He showed him a mental picture in his head. Yes? Yeah.
What about the Megalolium, in other words, the transmigration?
Gilgal, that's a whole different topic. Gilgal has nothing to do with the...
Because we could have been multiple people.
What? Will the real me please stand up? Right?
Exactly.
Right? We've been reincarnated many times. That's all the shepherd issue. So, Bli Neder, I think at my father's yortzeit is Tzom Gedalia. I want to tie that into the topic of Yonah. So, Bli Neder, and we'll talk about that. That the book of Yonah is actually the book of Gilgal, so we'll talk about it then. My father's yortzeit, Tzom Gedalia, Bli Neder. What? The Ari, right, and the Vilna Gaon and other great Kabbalists, right? How the book of Yonah is really a book on reincarnation, so we'll talk about it then. But that's a separate issue from the physical resurrection, right? The Torah goes on and tells us, B'shivim nefesh yodav asecha mitzrayma, with 70 souls you went down to Egypt, and now God has made you like the stars of the heaven. God has made you like the stars of the heaven. So Rabbi Yaakov, really, we're as many as the stars of the heaven? Huh? There never was as many Jews as there were Chinamen. How could God say, yesterday's reading, I've made you like the stars of the heaven? What? There never was as many Yidden as there were Chinamen. Oh, beautiful, Rivka. We all shine on like the stars. Who sang that? That's what God means. It doesn't mean quantity. There are never going to be as many Yidden as Chinamen. But when God says we are like the stars of the heaven, each one of us is what? A star. That's why the Jews invented Hollywood. Oh. Every one of us is a superstar. The stars shine forever, and we all shine on. Wow. We're all superstars to Hashem, and we all shine for eternity. That's why he compares us to what? To the starry night. Give that man a star. What? What about a falling star? Okay? I don't know. It's called a shooting star, I think, right? But anyway, each one of us is a star to Hashem, and we all shine forever, and that's what he means, but he doesn't mean, of course, quantity, because Jews have always been the least of all the nations, right? It means quality. It means eternity. We all shine on, right? And then the Torah goes on and tells us the parsha of Shema. It says, "V'nasati esav b'sad kontecho chalta savato." V'nasati esav b'sad kontecho, I will give grass for your animals in the field, and then you will what? Eat and be satisfied. So first it says what? Surely. First it says that what? I will feed the animals, and then God says you will eat. So the halacha, the Sprecher brachot learns halacha, that a person is not permitted to eat unless he feeds his animals. Yiddish? Great tzaddikim would buy a pet. Reb Tzvi, why would they buy a pet? To do this mitzvah. God says, I will give grass to your animals in the field first, and only then will you eat. So as halacha, you're not allowed to sit down to lunch or dinner unless you what? Feed the animal first. There's a story about the Netziv. You know Bar Ilan Street? Bar Ilan, his father was the great Netziv, Yehuda Berlin. And there's a story about him where he came home from Rosh Hashanah. It's late, a long davening Rosh Hashanah. And you have to eat, right? Make kiddush, but they had a chicken coop. They had to feed the chickens first. You can't eat until you feed the chickens. So they lost the key to the chicken coop. Rosh Hashanah, it's a longer davening. The family is hungry, Sharona. But they can't eat until what? They feed the chickens. But help! They lost the key. So the Netziv would not allow anybody to eat. They found a non-Jew, told him to break the lock on Yom Tov. Normally you cannot tell a non-Jew to do malacha for you on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to. But if there's tzar balachayim, the chickens are hungry and I'm hungry, so he got the non-Jew doctor to break the lock. Only when that was done, tzar balachayim, otherwise you cannot tell a goy to do malacha for you on Yom Tov. And only when the chickens were fed, Shirley, only then did the Netziv what? Make kiddush. At kedei kach. The halacha of feeding your animals first. Again, tsar balachayim. Tsar balachayim is minat Torah. Who's more concerned with the animal rights, the ASPCA or Judaism? So much so that you cannot eat unless you what? You feed the animals first, right? Then the Torah says, put a mezuzah on your door so you will live long. There are 4 mitzvahs in the Torah where the Torah promises long life. Everybody knows the 2. Keep it off aim and sending away the mother bird and taking the chicks. But there are another 2. One is honest weights and measures, and you'll live long. Pashas Kiteitzei. And the 4th one is yesterday's reading. The Torah says, put a mezuzah on your house, and you will live long. So I have not found, Rav Zalman, the connection. Why dafka those 4? Honoring your parents, sending away the mother bird, being honest in business, and having a mezuzah on your door. Those 4 the Torah singles out, but arichat yamim. I don't know the connection, but food for thought. You put a mezuzah on your door, your days will be increased, and you'll live long. Your days will be increased, kimei hashamayim ala haaretz, like the days of heaven on earth. Surely, what does that mean? Your days will be increased on the land that I swore to your fathers, kimei hashamayim ala haaretz, like the days of heaven on the earth. What does that mean? We say it every day, twice a day in the Shema, kimei hashamayim ala haaretz, like the days of heaven on earth. So what does that mean? Any ideas?
The next.
What?
This life and the next.
Your days will be increased on the land that I swore to your fathers, like the days of heaven on the earth. So you would say, Chavod, that God's promise that he gives us the land is as long as the heavens remain on the earth, which is eternity, right? No matter what John Kerry says, God's promise to give us this land is as long as the heaven remains what? Above the earth, which means eternity. But I want to say, Kimei Hashamayim al Haaretz, the tafkid of Judaism, Shirley, is to bring heaven on earth. Balatanya said it before me. The tafkid of Judaism is to bring heaven al ha'aretz, is to infuse the heavenly into the earthly. That's Judaism's all about, right? To bring the kiddush of the heaven down on earth. To infuse every part of the secular and the mundane with what? With kiddusha, right? Not to close yourself off in a monastery somewhere, right? But to interact with people, to bring shamayim al haaretz, right? Now, the mitzvah of mezuzah, which is more important? A person can only have enough money to buy a mezuzah or tefillin. Which comes first? What? You're right. Because mezuzah is 24/7. Every minute you have to have a mezuzah on your door. Every minute you have a mezuzah, the clock is ticking, the meter. Every minute. Who thinks about it? So at least when we leave a room, we should touch, you don't have to kiss it. But when you go into a room, put your hand on the mezuzah. Why do you do that? Every minute that the mezuzah is on the wall, day and night, 24/7, you're getting what? And women are obligated too, because it's not a time-bound mitzvah. Unlike tefillin, which is restricted. Tefillin is only during the day. There's no tefillin, Shabbos, and Yontif. It's limited. Mezuzah is 24/7. So therefore, mezuzah kaidim l'tefillin, because it's a mitzvah that all have, men and women, and it's also what? Kol hazman. Unlike tefillin, which is restricted and limited. So the great mitzvah of mezuzah, one of the 4 mitzvahs the Torah promises long life, and it's a mitzvah that keeps on giving constantly 24/7, day and night and day, unlike what? Tefillin, right?
But it's
What?
It's a mitzvah that identifies a Jew.
Go ahead.
And so any enemies of Jews
Right.
can always find them by the mezuzah.
By the mezuzah, uh-huh.
Why
No, a Jew lives there.
would it be there to identify so you could be attacked or something? Tefillin, nobody knows if you put it on.
Yeah.
Why was this chosen to identify?
It's the Rambam said it's a symbol that God is always watching out for us. It's a physical symbol that God is watching us. The Talmud tells of Unkelus Hager. Unkelus was a nephew of Titus. And he converted to Judaism. Big busha. The nephew of the emperor becomes a dirty Jew. So Titus sent the Roman soldiers to arrest him and bring him to trial. You are humiliating the name of Rome, becoming a dirty Jew. So as the soldiers came to arrest him, so the Talmud used a dialogue there. Remember, Abaron? So he asked them, let me ask you a question. So they noticed the mezuzah on the door. So the soldiers asked him, hey, Uncle Unkelus, what is that? Remember we said Unkeles? Yeah. What is that? So he says, unlike your emperor, where does your emperor sit? Sits in the palace, and his guards are what? Outside the palace guarding him. Our king doesn't sit inside the house. Our king is outside guarding us. The mezuzah is a symbol that our king guards us. Your king sits inside the palace, and you guards stand outside to guard him. Right? Our king, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the opposite. He doesn't sit in the palace. We sit in our home, and he stands outside the front door guarding us. So the soldiers heard that. What did they say? We want to join you. Right? So he sent another group. He said, don't talk to him. Right? Don't talk to them anymore. Right? So that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is guarding us, Maddie. The human kings, they have guards outside to guard them. Our God, he guards us at the gate. That's a symbol that God is watching us. That's a symbol that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what? Shomer Yisrael. Thank you very much.